Everybody, welcome. Take your time. There's coffee over there, water, tea, chips, salsa,
cookies.
Good stuff. Cookies. Thank you, TCVC and Alianza for food and beverage refreshments. It's a busy week, so good to see new faces that weren't even here yesterday. It's great. We'll get started in just a moment here. Really excited about this program. Really excited to see so many people here today excited about this program, wanting to learn more about it. We really think it's going to help revolutionize how we get more people on the land, more hands on the land, more people out in the acequias and growing food, growing fiber, growing whatever they're going to be doing. So our presenter today, Mr. Wes Medlock, is based out of our Farmington, San Juan County office. Weston, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and feel free to take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Yes, my name is Weston Medlock. Feel free just to call me Wes. I am the Senior Program Manager for New Mexico LandLink with the NMSU Extension Service. Who here is aware of the old LandLink program or website? Okay, got a couple. Wow, okay. So for most of you, this is perhaps a brand new concept, a website or program that's going on. So just to give a little bit of background context, New Mexico LandLink was actually started in 2010 by the Mid-Region Council of Governments with a little bit of support from the Thornburg Foundation. And so what they did a long time ago is they built a website that essentially was a standalone online platform that allowed farmers to list what they're looking for and then landowners to do the same. However, there wasn't a ton of kind of oversight and programming around it, or a manager, or anyone to kind of keep the website up to date and things like that. It served its purpose and it was a great website, but over time, it became apparent that it would come to its fullest potential under NMSU Extension. So, just a couple years ago, that transfer occurred, and they moved that website over to NMSU Extension. And since then, myself spent close to a year scrapping everything, rebuilding the website from the ground up, creating programs around it, and really giving it the attention and resources that it truly deserves. So as a lot of you are aware, land access continues to be one of the most critical challenges, not just in New Mexico, but across the country. Every single year, it seems like every single day, land values go up and up and up and up and up and up and up. With water scarcity in New Mexico, purchasing land or a house in New Mexico is one thing. Purchasing land in a house with sufficient water rights is a completely different beast. So, it is more critical than ever that programs like this exist, and honestly, what I fight for and wake up every day to do is to mitigate each and every acre that goes to development. That is today one of the most precious commodities that we have, and if current trends continue with development, by the year 2040, over 204,000 acres will be lost in New Mexico of agricultural lands to development. So that represents about 6.5 times the size of Santa Fe. That's gigantic, right?
Size of what?
Santa Fe? Yeah. And we just simply can't afford that rapid exponential loss of land. And so, thus, we have New Mexico LandLink. Oh, I've got a clicker.
You got a full clicker.
Yes. Awesome. So there's two kind of easy ways to break this concept up. We have the platform, which I will show you in just a moment. That's the website side of things, where folks can come across and kind of have their own personal and individual experience, list land as a landowner or trying to find land as a land seeker. And I'll kind of show some of the enhancements that have taken place compared to the old website. So that's the platform side of things. But, we determined that just throwing up a website and saying, hey, come use this and hope it works out, that's not really how we want to address land access. It needs much more of a hands-on, personal, tangible experience and counseling. And so that's the program side of it. So the programmatic side, one of the benefits and beauties of having this under extension is that we have folks like Will, and we have dozens and dozens of agents across the state in each and every county to kind of administer land access to their individual counties. So the benefit of that is I don't know what's exactly going on in Taos at all times and what the agricultural landscape is, or in Albuquerque, or in Socorro County, or in Las Cruces. So while I've been doing land access for quite some time, and I'm very familiar with the landscape of New Mexico in the agricultural sense, it's really important that the programmatic side and New Mexico LandLink equip the agents with the knowledge, the resources, the materials, and the guidance to be able to administer those things to you guys. So when we talk about land access, sometimes I've come across a few folks, this is like a controversial term. Land access is seen as like a kind of like a politically charged term that, yeah, there's a lot of different kind of lawsuits going on around the country that this word, or these two words have sort of been inserted, that's sort of kind of blurred the definition. So just to be clear, when we're talking about land access today, we are talking about the means by which farmers and ranchers access land and also retain access to agricultural land. And under that umbrella of land access, there are many different colors and shapes and sizes of what that actually looks like, what an agreement looks like, what those relationships looks like, the different operations, there's many different ways that can be broken down into and categorized into ways that pertain and are applicable to each and every person. And we'll go throughout all those different kind of ways to slice that pie in just a moment. So a couple of fun facts. So half of the U.S. Of farmers actually lease, half of farmers lease some or all of their farmland. So a lot of people think like farmers and ranchers, they must own or things like that. That's actually not the norm. So it's extremely common that these lease agreements and these different types of lease agreements that I'll go into in just a moment, that's actually kind of the norm of how agriculture works in the U.S. And about 90% of all farm landlords are not even farmers. And so that just begs the question and also the need to get farmers onto the lands of landowners who don't know how to farm the land. And that's okay. It's not your job as a landowner all the time to figure out how to, be a farmer or rancher overnight and steward that property. So it's important that programs like this make that bridge. Awesome. So getting right into it, because I do have a good bit of content to go through for this evening. And so I want to kind of display the website. We'll go through the pages real quick. I'll set up a mock profile. I'm hoping not to take like 45 minutes for that. It doesn't take long, but there's a lot of content on the website. So everybody's kind of familiar with what it looks like, how it functions, and things like that. So a couple of things I'd like to point out are some very user-friendly features that I worked very hard on with PHP and HTML and JavaScript to make these kind of user-friendly features work for everybody. So the first thing that a lot of folks like is a secure messaging portal. So the old website, you had to put your cell phone and your email address and your exact physical address, and you really had to put a lot of information about yourself out there in order to interact and utilize the website the way that it was intended to be used. So one of the leading kind of things I wanted to ensure when developing this platform was that people felt like their information was secure, it was private, they weren't trying to, give out all their information and, putting that big hook out there and hoping that somebody bites, and then 24 hours later you got like 30 spam emails and phone calls and things like that. So users of the platform I get a lot of feedback that they feel like they're not having to do that. And so the encrypted messaging portal allows users to be able to directly communicate and connect on the website. And if it's a good match, then say, hey, here's my address. Come, let's do a farm visit. Here's my cell phone number, and they can proceed accordingly. Also, a very user-friendly visual map, so you can actually scroll kind of throughout the state and see who is where, and then click on that. That takes you to the profile. A gigantic resource database with about, I think we're at like about 400 different resources. And I'll show you that and how to sort of navigate that. It's extremely comprehensive. It took me a ton of time. So if you find yourself on that website, or on that page of the website, take a look. I think that there will be a lot of content and resources that might be applicable to what you're trying to find. Internal links to NMSU extension. So on every page, there's the ability for users to find their own county extension agents. Because again, I'm not the expert for every individual in every single county in every shape and size. I can provide a ton of support and lots of knowledge, but folks like Will are, he's the expert here, right? So I can't speak for everything that he acutely knows and is very aware of. And so he is the expert. If you ever have questions, go to him first. But for things like land access and lease agreements and things like that, I tend to be a great resource because that's kind of my gig. That's what I wake up and do every day. Advanced filtering options, so you don't have to, like the old website, you go and try to look for land, you're like scrolling through dozens of pieces of land or dozens of farmers, and you can't you wouldn't be able to specify like what county or like what acreage, and so you have the ability to go to use the website, use those filters, and pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. Enhanced security, has to do with the secure messaging portal and a few other features. So there is one thing that I get a question about. Why do I have to upload a profile photo? Well, for land, it's, saying I've got 20 acres is one thing. If you're able to provide a compelling picture, that speaks so much more than saying I've got 20 acres here. And so for the landowner side of things, that's important to really convey what that opportunity actually is entails. And also for the farmer aspect, people want to see a face, right? Land access in these agreements, it's not an agreement first, it's a relationship. And I'll get into that, but that's really what both parties should be striving to achieve first. And if you have a good relationship and you build good rapport and good trust and communication, then oftentimes the lease agreement is actually the easier thing to figure out. We'll get into that in just a moment. Oh yeah, but going back to security, so there's some kind of things that I have users fill in, like in their profile, but those pieces, those kind of specific pieces of information make it extremely difficult for robots and things like that to actually scrape the website and go throughout and create spam and things like that. So there is a reason behind each and every question that an individual will fill out. The last thing is automated notifications. So you're a landowner or you're a farmer rancher and you create a listing and you have this crazy idea that you want to make this work, and then you create a listing and then you kind of forget to go there, right? So what if someone messages you and they're like, hey, I'm extremely interested, this seems like a perfect fit. You'll actually get a simple email that says, hey, so-and-so messaged you on LandLink, and it helps bring users back to the opportunities that are being provided on or through the website. You can also opt out anytime, so you're not locked into to getting those notifications. All right. So, who here has gone to the Mexico LandLink website, the platform? A couple, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. All right, so this will be new for a lot of you. So here is the home page. And on the homepage, you will find two very easy to understand kind of navigation points. So you have Find a Farm and you have Find a Farmer. And I made the buttons big for a reason. It was challenging in the aspect when creating this website. And by trade, I'm not a website designer or developer, so I had to teach myself a lot of things. So I learned a lot, which is great. But it was a unique challenge to, because I understood that there's going to be 18, 19, 20-year-olds using the site, right? Young, ambitious, beginning farmers and ranchers. And I've also had 90-year-olds, try and use the site. And for folks like that, looking for succession planning and looking to, find someone to take over their land, which would typically tend to be older folks, like I have to make things very simple, very, very simple, and big buttons, and easy to navigate. So still on the home page, we'll go through all this real quick, and then I will create a mock, kind of like dummy account, so we can all sort of figure out what that looks like. Farmer and rancher resources, which goes to this page. How it works, it's very simple. Anyone and everyone can go to the website. Also, it's completely free, so there's not a subscription or a sign-up fee or anything like that. So it's completely free to use from start to finish. And once you create an account, your name, email, password, simple stuff, that will then allow you to create a listing. So whether that's a land seeker listing or a landowner listing. But you first have to have an account set up. All right, here's a little support ticket. So if you need support, I can help. Whether it be like an issue with the website, or you are seeking assistance for land access, lease agreements, or relationship kind of mediation between the two parties. Lots of different ways that I can provide support, and I'll share more about that. Newsletter will be coming soon, as soon as I create more than 24 hours in a day. So it is my intention in the next month or two to get that newsletter sent out. I've got lots of good relevant content to be sending out, and it's going to be quarterly. I don't know about you, but sometimes organizations, they just send newsletters because it's just the thing to do, And I want to make sure that each newsletter has really relevant content that people can find useful and apply to their situation. So a little bit about New Mexico LandLink, and then here you've got a drop down of all the different counties, and each of those will go to the respective county extension office. So I've got 5 strategy pillars, and so a lot of people kind of get confused with what these are. So at the very start of this program, I wanted to kind of develop some key principles and some foundational guiding pillars for directing the evolution of New Mexico LandLink. And there are a lot more things to come than just the website and some resources and things like that. And so these 5 strategy pillars are sort of the guiding compass for how I and a very small team develop long-term strategy plans. So the first one, first and foremost, is land access and succession planning, natural resource stewardship, beginning farmer and rancher development, incredibly important, equitable market development, I'll touch on that at the very, very end, and then producer prosperity, so access to capital and things like that. Scrolling down, a little bit about why, some fun statistics, a really funny looking guy at the bottom. Awesome. So, now to kind of the meat of it. Find a farm. So you scroll down a little bit and you find the interactive map where you can kind of, on a more geographical type or approach, scroll throughout different towns and counties and just the whole state and find where folks are at. And so people find this kind of very useful for having a visual representation of who is where. So scrolling down, these are the different listings, and again, we're on Find a Farm, so these are listings of properties. And I do want to make a quick note that, what?
Sorry, I was
to get the vineyard one. I saw that one a couple days ago. I was like, I wish you lived in Albuquerque.
Yeah. I've actually talked on the phone with that individual. They have a very cool opportunity within that. And if anyone can't, I know the green, it looks different here, so it doesn't look like that on the actual computer. So I know it's a little kind of washed out. So if you're trying to read something, you can't read it up there, just let me know and I'd be happy to read it all. So these are different land opportunities, and you have some highlighted information under each and every listing. So we have like county, acreage, property type, agreement type, which I'll go into in just a minute, and then desired compensation. Let's click on the old vineyard. Awesome, so once you click on any of the listings, then you will find much more information and content about that specific property. Again, the visual map, and I'll go through kind of what these questions are in just a moment when we fill out the listing, which I won't take too much time with, because it's pretty intuitive. Awesome. So does everybody kind of get the gist of this? Yeah. Listings, yeah, cool. And then next we have the Find a Farmer page. So this would be for landowners looking for a farmer or rancher for their property, or different like business partnerships. There's different ways that they can, different reasons as to why they would be seeking out a farmer, rancher, or producer. And I'll get into that. So it kind of mirrors the same exact thing, but just a different application. Who can guess who this is? Yeah? I can't see them anywhere in the crowd. Yeah, that's well. But yeah, like I was saying, it kind of mirrors the same exact thing on the other side, but for producers. And I actually, as of like a couple weeks ago, received received confirmation of a successful match. It's actually this individual right here. Whenever I do presentations, I try not to like give names away and stuff like that, but super awesome guy. He's actually an ex-physicist, and he's starting an aquaponics operation. And so he created a listing, and on the flip side, a landowner created a landowner listing in Santa Fe, and this landowner just purchased a kind of like a farm-to-table bed and breakfast. And they found each other over the website, used the messaging portal, did a site visit, and I think that they'll be finalizing the lease agreement here in the next week or two. I've had a couple of conversations with them, and so, yeah, stories like this really make me wake up every day. And so basically, he'll be running an aquaponics operation on the property adjacent to the bed and breakfast and selling directly to that bed and breakfast. Pretty cool, man. All right, last page, and we'll do a quick mock setup. So here is the resources page. And I've got accordion menus within accordion menus within accordion menus. So I wanted to create a very comprehensive database for all shapes and sizes of farmers and ranchers and all shapes and sizes of landowners. And so it's not very useful when you just have like a list of like, just a bajillion different links and stuff like that. So everything is broken down within many different categories and like general categories. And as you click through those, you find more specific targeted topics. And it goes on and on. So like crop production topics, you've got specialty crops. Within that, you have more specialty crop topics. A lot of this is NMSU extension based research, so you know that this is not just some startup kind of nonprofit putting information out there. A lot of this is going to be extension based from NMSU as well as many other universities and extensions across the country. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all these, but you can see that there's a pretty comprehensive list of different opportunities and different resources. A lot of people like this one, the capital access. I tried to keep this up to date with different grants and cost share programs and loan opportunities, because that's really kind of like half the battle for land access. And not just land access, but just agriculture in general. Trying to scale up, trying to repair things, trying to get more tractor, trying to get seeds. So many different reasons as to why farmers need unique opportunities to access capital. So a lot of those can be found here. All right, without further ado, we're going to create an account. I don't know why I just put the username as Joe. No, but we're going to be Joe. All right. I'm perfectly fine with awkward silence. So username, first name, last name, password, email, number, what county you live in. Taos. Land seeker or landowner? Y'all pick. Seeker, beautiful. All right, how'd you hear about it? An event? And would you like to sign up for updates? Of course. Awesome. So once you click that button, super easy. It's going to send you. It's going to send you a confirmation email, and this goes back to the enhanced security. Prevents people on the website you don't really want on the website. Activate your account. Alright, and then from here, it'll actually take you directly to your listing. So you're not like going back to the home page and trying to navigate like how do I get to my profile. So it's set up to where it's a plug and play. It's very kind of self-guided. And so first thing you do is upload a photo. Just make sure you pick a good side. I've got one photo in here of a property in Mora. And I got to know this landowner, and I was like, did you just upload like a stock photo? And it's like this beautiful pond and like a rainbow, and he was like, no, that's my real property. And I was like, okay, you should win some prize out of it. That's amazing. Awesome, so you have some very basic general information. Your listing title. So there's a couple of kind of tips that I would like to point out for those of you that might be interested in creating a listing. Make a good listing title. It drives me crazy when like a farmer's like, need land. I need land too. I want land too. Where do you need land? How much land do you need? Why do you need land? And same thing for landowners, like, need farmer. And I'm like, dude, no. And I'll actually call them sometimes and be like, hey, I really appreciate it, but you want to give a little bit more information? Because you're trying to sell something, right? You're trying to either sell your opportunity, or you're trying to sell what you can do for that opportunity, right? And there's like a slight kind of like marketing side of it. And so you want to provide as much information as you can and as you're comfortable with, because that's going to by far be the most likely odds that you'll actually find someone, or someone's going to message you. And I've seen this time and time again throughout all my kind of years and experience with this. The more people like share about what they want, their vision, like kind of like the personal aspect, that's what draws other people in, right? And so if you're a fish, are you gonna bite a rusty, kind of smelly, kind of crumbly hook? Or would you go towards something shiny, right? You're trying to put that hook out there and you want to make it attractive while it's still being truthful. You don't want to embellish. In this section right here, it's kind of difficult for y'all to see. I'm looking here and y'all looking there. So, here's my laser. So this says, please share about yourself and your farming goals. And so the rest of the listing here, you'll find it's just checkboxes. I want to make it easy. I want to make it quick. I don't want people to spend an hour trying to type out 30 different questions or answers to 30 different questions. But this is your opportunity to tell a story. This is your opportunity to dial in exactly what you're looking for, right? What's your 2-year vision for the property? What's your 5-year vision? What's your ideal perfect farmer or rancher, or your ideal perfect landowner? And so this is really the time that you get to distinguish yourself among all the other listings. And so I really, really encourage folks to exhaust this, this little box right here to share about that information. So here you have your address, and so your address will not be publicly visible to anyone. It'll just show up as a little pin on the map, super easy. Because I don't really want to give out that type of information, make people have to give out that information. The county, the size, the acreage, what types of agricultural land are you looking for? So like fallow, orchard, ranch, farm, pasture, rangeland, things like that. Do you require that the property be fully operational? So this can apply to perhaps more experienced farmers and ranchers that they want a turnkey property. They know what they're doing. They want to just jump into an opportunity that they can just get started. Some farmers and ranchers that sometimes either have less experience or they're looking to diversify to a different type of operation, they will actually seek out fallow land that needs a lot of work. And I'll get into the benefits for both the land seeker and the landowner as to why that can oftentimes be a really, really good agreement. And there's a lot of pros to that type of agreement. What types of production are you seeking land for? Specialty crops, there's a whole list there. Orchard, forage crops, cattle, livestock, things like that. Any specific production practices, so things like organic, regenerative, ecological, permaculture is an option there. Hydroponics, aquaponics, season extension, things like that. Needs and preferences, are you looking for a property that has a specific equipment? Is it essential that you have housing on the property? It's a huge kind of make or break for a lot of folks. And as a side note, if you're ever, as a land seeker or landowner, and you have, the agreement has some sort of housing in addition to access to the land, I highly recommend that you do that housing tenant lease agreement completely separate than the land lease agreement. That's best practice. Are you looking for land with a particular source of irrigation or water rights? Which irrigation methods will be suitable for your operation? You've got a list there. And again, we're doing a land seeker listing. So these questions are sort of mirrored for landowners, kind of like the opposite phrasing. Desired land access types. This will be what we spend most of the rest of the presentation on, is kind of breaking down some of these more technical components in a non-scary way. What types of land agreements are you looking for? So we'll get into that. What types of compensation are you looking for or most interested in? We'll get into that. Do you intend to have a written land lease agreement? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm so serious. I can't drive that home hard enough. I could scream really loud and break these speakers. If ever you are in an agreement as a farmer, or rancher, or landowner, any agreement, it doesn't have to be a land lease agreement for agriculture. It's good to put something in writing. And it doesn't have to be a 20-page technical document that you spend $2,000 to have a real estate attorney review. Just have things that both parties have agreed on and put that communication, that language on a piece of paper. It can be in writing. You can cut out letters from a magazine and and piece it together, but put it in writing and then sign it. And that will hold up, that will usually deter or prevent things from going south if that may, were to happen. And sometimes, you have a conversation a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there's disagreement, and like, I can't remember the conversation I had this morning with my wife. And so, oh, no, I'm just kidding. But it's, yeah, she's not here. And, so it's not a realistic expectation that, oh man, we've had a great conversation, we're on the same page, we're totally gonna remember this. So just put it on paper and then sign it. An old land access program I ran for the San Juan County Extension Office. I wouldn't even work with individuals if they weren't willing to put something in writing. Because I was like, I'm not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. Because if something goes south, I'm like, I don't want my name brought in there and Wes said that he. So it's very, very important that you put it in writing. Last thing, what's your desired timeline for securing an agreement? Some folks, they want as soon as possible. To make a break. I will never forget, last year I was in tears on the phone with a rancher. And she had 150 head of cattle. She didn't have anything in writing. She'd been there for 6 years. I think it was like a family friend. And they sold the property. And said, you've got to be out in, I think it was 15 days. Yeah. And actually her kid had, my wife is a speech language pathologist, and her kid was like one of her patients, and she had some kids that needed special attention. And a big family, and like that was their livelihood right there. And I remember I broke down because she broke down with me, and we're all crying, and I was like, I'm gonna get your property. And she eventually got access to another parcel, but it caused a ton of issues. So some folks, going back to this question, they need it as soon as possible, and then other folks, they have the luxury of time. Like, I only want this to work if it's going to be the perfect fit, and that can work out in a lot of cases. You just have to have a little bit of patience. All right. So, that is how you set up a listing. Any questions on that? Yes?
Do you have like a simple template for an agreement, or just?
Yes, I do, and we will we'll touch on that in just a moment. She asked if I had a template, like a land lease agreement kind of template to use. So at this current time, NMSU Legal is taking its time to produce an NMSU extension land lease agreement template. It's just the nature of the beast working with the federal land grant institution, and it took quite a bit of time to convince them that this is not real estate. The university is not partaking in a new real estate service. We are not doing that. We're not taking a commission. We're not doing that. And so after convincing them of that, I was like, hey, I got a lease agreement template, and they're like, okay, kid, you need to slow your roll a little bit. So we will have eventually, hopefully, we will have kind of our own kind of, statewide New Mexico kind of specific land lease agreement. However, I'll show you lots of examples that are kind of plug and play and can apply to most all situations.
And will you provide that to us on email?
Yes, so if anybody would like a copy of this email, or not this, copy of this presentation, Will can pass that along to you. After this, I'll send this presentation back over, and that will be that. And also, I've got business cards, and so if one of the things I love most about my job and what the things that I enjoy are talking to people. So if you have questions about I can't cover every single detail in here. So if you want to email me or give me a call on my cell phone, I'm happy to provide you resources and really kind of hash out what some of these details are. So real quick, I won't spend a ton of time on this because we got some juicy stuff. Benefits of land lease agreements or leasing land. So like I was saying before, there's lots of different ways to sort of look at the word land access. And a lot of people, well, I'll just say that a lot of people sort of typically go to the concept of like a lease agreement. And that makes a lot of sense, right? So some of the benefits for land owners and then land seekers, being farmers and ranchers, starting with the land seeker. So obviously it's going to be a far less expensive monthly and long-term initial cost than purchasing land and paying for that mortgage, right? Tax deductions for leasing costs. So depending upon the agreement, it can actually be a tax write-off. The lease payments that you put forth towards that property or to the landowner. Rights to terminate. So hopefully you don't have to terminate, right? You wouldn't enter into an agreement that you intend to terminate, right, prematurely. But people are people. Stuff happens sometimes. And so I'll talk a little bit about how to avoid some of those things. But it's always nice to have an option of saying, you know what, it's not working out according to these things that we put in the agreement, so I need to terminate. It's hard to terminate from a mortgage, right? It's really hard. You have major repercussions, but land lease agreements, you have that luxury if the event arises. Allowing savings or investment in short-term capital needs. So this is kind of in tandem with the first one. With the cost savings that you would have in comparison to purchasing land, you can invest that into, typically like when people are leasing land, they kind of envision, or the Taj Mahal dream is to own that farm, or own a farm, or own a ranch. And so the cost savings that one would find with leasing, that can be reinvested into the long-term land tenure. Test period for enterprises, locations, and markets. Going over to the landowner. It provides passive supplemental income. And the reason I put supplemental in there is because I have talked to landowners and they're like, I've got 10 acres and I'm thinking about quitting the job. I'm not sure how much you make of your job, but I don't think it would be a good trade-off. And so it definitely does provide passive income, but I always tell landowners, don't anticipate that a monthly or annual lease agreement or crop share, depending on the size, it can be a gigantic operation that can really be profitable, but it's not going to be, you're not going to be raking in $3,000 a month from, 10 acres of land or something like that. It can be extremely helpful, passive, but that's the reason I put supplemental. Significantly lowers your property tax expenses. So if your property is residential and it has the ability to, if you satisfy the terms and conditions that warrant that property to be rezoned or reclassified as agricultural, you'll save like a tremendous amount in your property taxes, like a lot. And that's actually a big incentive as to why landowners want to find a farmer, because it's in like an agricultural zoning, and they know that they're like out of compliance, and they don't want to pay $4,000 a year in property taxes when they could pay $400. All right, achieves desired land management. So this is a huge thing that I think one of the things I really like to put out there is because this is something that not a lot of folks are aware of. So if you're a landowner or a farmer, but let's go with the landowner perspective. So something I don't see in a lot of lease agreements that I wish I saw more of, because it's typically both parties are on board with it and it really helps that relationship building, is that landowners can prescribe and put in their conservation plan. And it is the responsibility of that land seeker, that farmer rancher, to uphold that conservation plan. And that can be one of the thresholds that sort of warrants like a termination or like that tenant like defaulting if they don't uphold those conservation practices and plans set forth beforehand. So a lot of times landowners will require that a conservation plan be put into the lease agreement, and that's part of the agreement, sometimes in lieu of monetary compensation. Contributes to the local food economy. Who doesn't want to do that? Of course you want to do that. And then fallow to farm may increase land value. So you got two partners, or husband and wife, and they bought 50 acres. They want some room, right? And after like 3 or 4 years, they're like really tired of living in this. And if they want to keep that land in agriculture, they want to have a producer on it. Well, a lot of times, turning that just fallow, blanket of land into like a productive operation can increase the value of that property, if ever, whenever it is sold. So it can be seen as a way to invest passively through someone else, while also getting passive income, to increase the value of your property if and when you sell it. So, wow, I'm doing terrible on time. All right, so a few different ways to cut the cake here. So a lot of people think of, when they think of land lease agreements, I think, okay, a monthly payment or an annual payment. And that's fine, that works for a lot of folks. That's not unusual, and if that works for both parties, like, yeah, go for it. So that is considered a cash lease. And so it's pretty cut and dry. It's not super complex. But both parties determine an amount of money that they pay either monthly or annually. Determining the cost of land is the difficult part. So, as an employee of New Mexico State University, I'm not allowed to prescribe values to land. So I'm not a land appraiser. I can't, come out to your land and say, yeah, you can probably get about, $200 an acre for, whatever that number is. It's a pretty good property for 200 an acre. But there are several different ways that I can help guide you to come up with what that number looks like. And there's different formulas that I can use, different databases that I can provide you with. And so if any of you are out there and you're trying to put your finger on what that number looks like, give me a call and we can go through what that looks like. And it's not that difficult. But going back to the relationship part, it's always important to calculate and then negotiate. Because a lot of people want to negotiate and calculate, and if you build that relationship, both parties kind of have their own calculation. If it matches, great. If it doesn't, then you negotiate. But the negotiation will only usually be as successful as the relationship building that started at the first conversation. Does that make sense? All right, share agreements, like a crop share agreement. So these can really kind of take any shape and size. Shares can be based on profitability of the producer, or they can also be based on the percentage of that market value for a crop. And there's many different ways of how that agreement works. What crop are you growing can oftentimes kind of determine the value or percentage cut between both parties. But crop shares are also a fairly common agreement. So grounds lease, or grounds lease. This one is unique and provides a lot of benefits to both the land seeker and the landowner, but I would recommend that both parties know what they want, put it in writing as much as possible, and then you might want to consult with a real estate attorney to dial in some of the actual compensation structures. So essentially a grounds lease, and it might be difficult to read. Y'all want me to read these? For those in the back?
Well, that would be on the website.
It would. So this isn't on the website, this page. This information can be found through several of the different resources, but this particular kind of slide that you're looking at is not directly on the website. So a grounds lease, it's a long-term agreement where the tenant rents land owns buildings and improvements. But the lease agreement should include what happens whenever, if ever, that lease were to terminate. So this only really applies towards long-term lease agreements. You're not going to make capital improvements over like a year or two lease agreement, right? So specifying exactly what happens if and when that lease expires or is terminated. And so a few examples would be that the tenant remove that infrastructure. So whether it be like a greenhouse, like a permanent greenhouse, or irrigation, or a hay barn, fencing, things like that, those would be considered capital improvements. But if you're a farmer, like you don't want to fork out, 20 grand on something and then, you're off to some other thing 5 years and then you're out that money, right? So in that case, a lease or a grounds lease can be a great option to ensure that your investments are returned in some way. And so the third option would be that the tenant receive compensation for the value of those assets put in place. You want to always keep in mind appreciation for things like that. In-kind services. I know a lot of landowners and farmers that really like this type of agreement. So if you are seeking as compensation, or if you're wanting to see your land be productive, you want to offer the opportunity to a farmer rancher, and you're not really trying to quit your day job and shake them upside down for the lunch money, but you want to see it be used. But in return, you can use ditch cleaning, you can use fence repair, you can use all kinds of services that there's many. I can't list all the different services that a person would want, but it can be a very mutual relationship with agreements like that. Sliding pay scale. So this is really applicable to landowners who have fallow land or farmers and ranchers looking to enter onto a fallow piece of property. So when let's say just a specialty crop farmer, right? And there's not a lot of infrastructure. The ground is clay, rock hard. There's hardly any irrigation set up. You've got bindweed and thistle everywhere, and you're probably not going to make a lot of money in your first year as a farmer, right? And it doesn't make a lot of sense to make that property cost prohibitive for an opportunity that's likely not to shake out in the first year or two, right? And so a lot of times this is a very, very attractive agreement for those that have fallow land, because they can turn that kind of ugly, infested, weed infested land into something that's beautiful and productive, and in return know that they're providing an opportunity that's going to be sustainable, that land continues to build soil health and things like that, irrigation management, acequias, ditch cleaning, all kinds of different ways to account for some of the deficiencies that will occur in the first year or two. First right of refusal. So who here has heard lease to own, that term? Lease to own, yeah. So a lot of people, when they think of lease to own, they're actually referring to a land contract. And there's sort of two angles to approach with that kind of concept of a lease to own. So typically it means first right, or right of first refusal. So what that means is that it allows the tenant to have the very first chance before anybody else, any other bid, any other potential buyer. They have the first chance to buy that property if the owner puts it on the market. So it kind of secures that you're number one on the list, right? And typically that conversation is going to be hashed out long before that house were to go on the market, and discussing the viability of it, of that producer being able to purchase and things like that. But regardless, right of first refusal. So typically when people think of a lease to own, they think of a land contract. And that's a land lease agreement that allows the farmer or rancher to pay the landowner towards purchase. And so that is sort of I like to redefine that term. that's really kind of what folks mean when they say lease to own. Which can be, super helpful. At the start, I was talking about how cost prohibitive purchasing property with water rights is, and this way you can work towards that goal, right? You don't have to slap down 20% and cross your fingers. So that's the land contract. And then obviously you have a sell, like an outright, sell or purchase of the property. This can be a standard purchase or owner financing. Awesome. So, lease agreements. Who here has or has had a agricultural land lease agreement in the past? Raise it high, raise it high. I'm a lease agreement experienced professional. So, land lease agreements, they can be 30 pages, or I've seen them half a page, right? I've seen less than half a page. And less than half a page is better than no page. Get it in writing, okay? But a lot of people kind of get intimidated with land lease agreements, right? Because they think of it as like a very technical real estate attorney kind of driven contract. And yeah, it can be like that if it's a multi-million-dollar operation that's being transferred to giant operation kind of succession plan where you're trying to transfer assets and figure out taxes and stuff like that. That wouldn't be a land lease agreement. But anyways, people can get sort of intimidated. And some of the terms you see up here, this isn't exhaustive, but it's about 80% of all the sort of categories that you could include in a land lease agreement. So, I'm glad I didn't include those 3 other slides, because I was going to break down some of these in a lot of detail, but I'm just going to go over real quick and sort of make this whole concept more palatable if and when you enter into your next land lease agreement. So the first one is a preamble. So this is like super informal kind of clause or area that just has to be, doesn't have to be, but just 2 or 3 sentences that say, hey, this agreement set forth is between Joe and Susie. And the purpose of this is to provide access to this address for agricultural purposes, and that's all it really has to be. It just kind of, it sets the tone for what the rest of the agreement will look like, what's to be. So the premise. Sometimes people write land lease agreements, they don't even specify the property. And when you're thinking of, when I think of land lease agreements, everything's provisionary, right? You're trying to account for things that may go bad, right? Typically when you're ready to shake someone's hand, you're not aware, or you're not thinking from the angle of man, this could go wrong, and this could go wrong, and this could go wrong. And so a land lease agreement tries to be proactive with those provisions. And so something that would be very useful if something were to go south is this is the actual address of the property that we're talking about. So the premise just identifies where it is. It can be coordinates, it can be the address, it can be mile marker, 20, whatever it is. The term of the lease, an extension or renewal. So specifying exactly when it starts and when it ends. And more importantly, what happens beyond that. So there's a couple different ways to extend or renew a lease agreement. There's a type called evergreen, a type called holdovers, and there's one other. But essentially you can either, if both parties are in compliance with the agreement and the different terms and conditions, then it would extend 1 year beyond that. Say it's 3 years, right? So after that first year, it would extend another year, right? And then the total term at that point would be a total of 4 years. The second type would be if both parties are in agreement, everything's working out, it would extend for that, say, a 3-year for another 3 years instead of that 1 year addition. Does that make sense? And then the third, the holdover, is sometimes these arrangements, like a farmer and rancher and landowner, things are working great. You know, they're not having to check in like every day or every month or whatever. They're on the same page, you know. The farmer rancher, they're doing their job, and the landowners, you know, agreeing to their terms and upholding their end. And so a holdover is basically like if both parties don't officially renew their renew the lease agreement, then it would extend for another consecutive year. Rent and compensation. So this is pretty much what we talked about in the last slide. So what does that rent and compensation look like? If you have questions about how to really put your finger on what that number is, then you want to give me a call, and I can help you with that. I just can't tell you exactly, you know, the number. And also the schedule. So when should they be paying you? When should you receive payment? How should they pay you? Is it a check? Is it Venmo? Is it cash? Is it monopoly money? Doesn't matter, but whatever it is, just put it in writing, the form and the schedule, the form of payment. Permitted and prohibited uses of the property, especially within New Mexico. So water rights are separate than like property rights in New Mexico. So it is important just to have something that says Farmer Susie has rights to my my water rights to use them. And then whatever sort of like irrigation scheduling and things like that that apply for your specific property or safety or any sort of unique detail that can be put in the prohibited or permitted and prohibited uses of the property. Repairs, maintenance, and improvements. So this can be sometimes difficult to sort of like define each of these and how they're distinct in their own ways. But I'm going to give you a couple like rules of thumb. Don't substitute this as like legal advice. Like Wes said, you know, Wes said this, and I did this, and so the sort of like the rules of thumb for this is typically repairs are going to be costs covered by the landowner, and I've seen in several different states that 250 is like a common threshold for like a minor versus a major repair. So if it's something that's, you know, like $100 or $150, and it's essential for the operation to continue operating, then it's not uncommon that the farmer is sort of expected to cover that repair, get back to work, right? When it's major repairs, right? Sometimes that's going to be the responsibility of the landowner to fix. So just defining like what those different things are. It's hard to account for things that, or to anticipate things that are going to need repair. So kind of the takeaway would be just identify what that number threshold is. You know, if it costs this much, it's your responsibility. If it costs that much, it's our responsibility. Typically, maintenance is going to be covered by the farmer rancher as well. It's always good to provide detail, like what that may look like as far as like financially, you know, identifying a threshold. A lot of times that's going to be the farmer. Improvements, unless it's a ground lease, where the tenant, farmer rancher actually owns and pays for, implements and owns those assets, then improvements are going to be the cost of the land owner, pretty much always. And an improvement, think of an improvement as like a capital asset. So if you were to resell that property, it'd be a little bit more because you put in that improvement, that capital infrastructure. This is a big one. Transfer or sale of the property. What happens if the property is sold? Or it's transferred, right? This is when I get phone calls of like, oh my God, Wes, like I need your help, like stop everything you're doing, like I've got to find land, or I've got to, you know, because they didn't talk about, well, what happens if the property is sold? Does that lease agreement transfer over to the next landlord or landowner, or does it terminate with that sale? And also, what happens to the crops? So you get 50 acres of sweet corn, right? It was in the agreement that lease agreement would terminate at the time of sale. They've got a really enticing offer. They can't help but sell, right? But what happens to those crops? Is that farmer out 50 acres of sweet corn? I hope not. Do they have rights to re-enter the property after that sort of expiration of the lease to be able to harvest their crops? Or does the landowner compensate that farmer for the market value of the crops planted in that season? So it's really important because that's an asset for the farmer. That is how the farmer's going to make money. So you really need to account for whether you're a farmer or a landowner, like what that tremendous value sitting out in the field is actually like what's going to happen with it in the event that something is transferred or sold or even terminated. So leading, I'm going to be second to last, but termination clause, and I'll go kind of back to that topic. Liability and insurance, this is at the discretion of the land seeker or landowner. If you want to have insurance, I think it's a really good idea. It's not very expensive. Actually, I got a quote just a few months ago because I was curious. Threw out like some hypotheticals, talked to an agent. I think it was like $20 a month. And it was $1 million per event and $2 million aggregate. And if you name the farmer on your coverage policy, then that is a great way to sort of be proactive and just make sure that, you know, if someone breaks your leg, you're not going to get sued for a couple $1 million. Conservation agreement. So I've already touched on this, but work with NRCS and work with Soil and Water Conservation District, work with Will, work with others to determine what conservation, like what's your 5-year kind of vision for the property as it relates to different conservation practices. Spell those out and then put that in the agreement. It's a great way to kind of have a non-monetary value added component to the lease agreement. And it's typically a win-win for both parties. Termination clause. So typically, well, when you have to activate a termination clause, typically means that one of the parties is in default. That's the word for it, default. So throughout the whole agreement, you're kind of specifying like what the expectations are of both parties. You're trying to anticipate the expectation of both parties. That's called relationship building, to anticipate what that expectation is. And sometimes not all expectations can be anticipated, put into writing, talked about beforehand. And so in the event that there's a disagreement, then it's highly, highly advisable to have a termination clause. But also what happens with that termination clause, how is it enforced? Do you need 30 days in writing? Can either party terminate for no reason? Or does it have to be in compliance with like either, if either party defaulted, right? And going back to 50 acres of sweet corn, well, what happens to that sweet corn? If you're a farmer and there was something that was super clear in the permitted and prohibited uses of the property, and they violate one of those, and it really, it warrants termination. If the landowner feels like that was, you don't get 3 strikes, you're out, you get 1 strike. Kind of a mean landowner, but does that farmer get to harvest the crops? Or is it like, or is the risk so steep that if they default or do something wrong, then they're out, those crops? And if you are a farmer, I would really, really advocate for yourself that you have rights to be able to harvest your crops, or just what that looks like. Are you compensated at market value? What does that look like? And hopefully I'm not scaring anybody away from these agreements. I'm just trying to pepper in things that are great to think about whenever you do enter into one. And procedures to resolve disputes. So you want to have a spelled out way as to like how you're going to deal with stuff, right? Are you just going to deal with it like just screaming at each other out in the middle of the field and like whoever screams loudest like wins? No, you want to figure out a way that it's a pretty bad example. They probably have this more often than not though, if they are in a disagreement. But having a way that like both parties agree on like, hey, if we disagree on something, like here's how we're going to like take steps to resolve that, right? You don't want a termination of a lease. we want it to last. So like, how do we, work together in advance, like know a plan to come to a consensus? Any questions? I talk a lot. I like this stuff.
Are you done?
Yes.
In your presentation?
What's that?
Are you done with your presentation?
I've got one more, but I can be done. Are you tired of me?
No, I don't want to ask any questions still.
Okay,
Because I get more questions than you do.
awesome. Yes, sir.
Oh, I just had a general question too. Well, I was curious, how does the funding work for like having you continue to like be the person facilitating this program? Is it kind of planned out into the future?
Will, did you collect $100 registration fees? Oh, this might be my last day. Yeah, so I received funding through this, a special crop block grant through the Mexico Department of Agri-Cultura. And I've got a few different revenue streams that I'll be deploying through this program to help kind of provide that supplemental income so that, I can feed my dogs and things like that. And beyond those revenue streams, there's also another statewide program that I'm about to launch that will be more of a moneymaker for not only this program, but for that other program. So grants, right now, totally grant funded. Yeah. Lots of deliverables and fun stuff. Actually,
Not land lease, but.
LandLink, yeah. Great question. So, gentleman asked, how old is this? And I forgot to mention that. So, whenever you do go on the site, I think I've got like 35 different listings right now, but it only launched mid-November of last year. So, it is a very new website. Phase 2, a very, very big statewide Phase 2 marketing campaign will start next week. And the very soft first phase of the marketing campaign had a ton of traction, and I'm anticipating that the listings and the accounts, I think there's 100 and something accounts, but only like 35 listings right now. But the number of listings and properties available and farmers will likely quadruple in the next couple months.
What exactly is the thing you type in? I can't find the link on here.
Yes, good question. So it is LandLink NM for New Mexico .org.
Thank you.
How have I gotten this far? I didn't even mention the URL. Thank you so much. Yeah, so again, that's landlinknm.org, and that's how you'll be able to go to the site. So real quick, actually, any more questions?
Yeah.
I think you got a really good question. I feel like you're just itching.
Oh, yeah. I'll just read it. Once you're done, I'll answer.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm probably not going to go through all of these. Yeah. But these are examples of land lease agreements. These aren't all the examples that I have. Just some highlight ones. Yes, sir.
A question on liability.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up as I've talked to about these things, about doing this is the liability, and that the insurance will cover liability. You don't want to put your farm at risk by trying to do something that's innovative and somebody hurts themselves and you get sued and you end up losing your land.
Yeah.
So the liability and the protection of the land, and it works both ways also, but is that covered under insurance, and is there resources in there that'll talk about that?
Yes, actually, so on the resources page, if you go to Land Access, there's several different articles that talk about insurance and liability and what that actually looks like on kind of a practical, in a practical sense. But typically, general liability insurance is sufficient for things like that. You can, diversify into like crop insurance and stuff like that, but that's kind of not, I think, what you're talking about. It's more like exposing that asset to liability that could then perhaps maybe jeopardize the ownership of that, right?
For example, if you have a tractor and you allow the leasee to use the tractor and there's an accident, that, versus, somebody cleaning a ditch and cutting themselves with a shovel or something, that's
Yeah.
kind of two different scenarios that could happen.
Definitely, you're exactly right. Those can definitely happen. And like I was saying, like usually a general liability will cover personal injury and things like that. There's different insurance policies out there. I'm not an insurance expert, right?
You can buy for the equipment and everything. I have a policy that, like, I tend not to want to use anybody else's equipment because I don't want to be responsible
Like an
for it.
umbrella
But let's say
and
you wanted to lease it to me,
Like an umbrella policy or
yes, it'll cover it. Like
Definitely.
if somebody steals a chainsaw, my insurance will pay for this chainsaw from the store.
Yeah.
You just have to file a police report, or there's all kinds of stuff in there, and it's.
will it pay for the legal cost if you caught the guy that stole the chainsaw?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's a lot of, and it's, like he says, it's, to be broad, it's not as cheap as he said, but you can buy it.
Yeah, sorry, doing a cough drop. My mouth gets scratchy. Telling me something. Yeah, so the quote that I got was like very hypothetical. I think I did like 10 acres and I did not list that many kind of exposures to risk. But whenever you're on the phone with an agent, and I know insurance agents, they're happy to talk to you about the policy. So it's not difficult to get a quote, and then you would just list out the different sort of exposures that may come with that type of agreement, and they'll factor that in.
Some insurance companies that obviously specialize in farming and fishing as opposed to state farm.
Mm-hmm.
Is that and it'd be 270 estimates.
Yeah, and both parties do due diligence, and that's a big thing. Like it shouldn't be like, oh, I've got the landowners. I'm sure they're going to figure it out. Like, is there liability on them? You're going to let them do it. No, it's in your best interest to know exactly what that policy says, right? And vice versa. So don't assume you know what the other person wants or agrees to or things like that. That's the purpose of this, right? It's to put all of it out on the table. And then first, build a relationship. Build trust, build communication. And then those technicalities, those different, the more technical things that come with it are much easier to figure out if both parties want to work together because they have a good relationship and trust. So, I don't think, yeah, I definitely don't have that. So, let's see. Of all of these, I think this might be the most useful resource here. I've got a lot more lease agreement templates and examples, a lot of which are like kind of plug and play. So you don't have to spend 30 hours trying to start with the very first letter and end with the last period, trying to draft everything from scratch. And I'm happy to help guide you with what it actually looks like. The only thing I can't do, so there's like kind of big two no-nos in my job. I can't draft a lease agreement for you for legal reasons with NMSU. Also, I'm not a certified real estate attorney. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've got a lot of experience, but I should not be substituted as legal services, right? So I can't draft it for you, but I can really help you out with how to go about it. And then the second thing I mentioned, I can't prescribe values to land. I'm not a land appraiser. Thank you. But this is the resource out of those 5 that I think that you would find extremely helpful. Land for Good is a wonderful nonprofit. They do amazing work. I just couldn't speak highly enough about them. And they've been in this game for a long time. And they are really kind of like the poster child for a lot of nonprofits across the country for how to model their approach with land access and things like that. A lot of their content and programming is, so they're based northeast. Do you know what state? It's not Vermont. Yeah. Was it Massachusetts? Completely wrong. I don't know. No, New England. Okay, I'm gonna put it guessing. But they, a lot of their content does pertain to that region, but a lot of their content is also applicable to places all across the country. But the build a lease tool, they developed a long time ago, and essentially it will walk you through step by step a lot of the different components that I just mentioned, and it'll kind of give you some baseline language to plug into your lease agreement. You can choose, like, I think it gives you 3 options for each of those different components, and you can choose which of those clauses or segments are most applicable for what you're looking for. You go throughout the whole thing, it will generate a land lease agreement, right? And that land lease agreement might be, need to be put into Word and make some other, specifications or details or things like that. But for the most part, it'll do, I want to say probably 80+% of the work for you. A great tool, very user-friendly. Going back to my presentation. So again, here are a few other examples. Actually, 3 of these, 3 of the other examples come from Land for Good. This is California FarmLink, and yeah, I've got many others. Do we have time for this part? This was like a special request. I wanted to. So.
Spend a minute on it.
Huh?
Spend a minute on it, just make people aware that they need to know.
Cool. Water rights. How do you know if you're looking at a property that has water rights, right? That they are up to date, that the water rights have been transferred to whatever the most previous owner is, how many acre feet is allotted, and there are. It's very sad, it's very discouraging and frustrating how difficult it is in New Mexico to find who has rights to use what water where. That, like, of all states, New Mexico should have the most streamlined, dialed in, easy to use system for knowing what water's going where. Like, it drives me up the wall. Because, yeah, y'all, I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but I wanted to explain to y'all a very simple way to assist you with kind of identifying what the water rights might be for a property. So first, you would navigate to your Office of State Engineers, this website right here. And I can also provide a copy of this presentation if you want to follow that step by step. And then you would click on, this is the home page, by the way, New Mexico Office of State Engineers. Click on Water Rights Lookup. So if you click on this button, this big kind of like icon down here, that'll actually take you to a GIS map. You can look up some very useful information. But I go to step 4, which says New Mexico Water Rights Reporting System. And once you click on that, it will take you to this. And what you're looking for here, there's 2 ways to get to it. On the left side of the screen in the top, you see Water Rights Summary. You can click there, or you can also click right, I got a pointer, use my finger. You have Water Rights Summary Report. So you can either go here or here. So we're going to click on this one right here. There's 2 ways you can look it up. You can use the water right file number, or you can look it up by the owner's name. They have their first and last name. And so in New Mexico, for Taos, by and large, pretty sure every single time, for the basin name, you're going to do surface declaration. I can send you a copy of the presentation. You can, go step by step, figure it out. Yes, I'd be happy to give this to you for sure. But surface declaration, that's the one that you're going to be clicking on in Taos. You gotta have the number of your ditch. So how you would find that is go to your Mordomo, get the number of the ditch, I wish there was a one-stop shop where it's like all the ditches, all the numbers, and people could actually just do the work themselves. And I'd have to call people and track people down and follow up emails, but reach out to your Mordomo, get the ditch number, and you can look it up that way. So we're gonna do 30. This is a ditch that's close by. Actually, this is the Jose. Yeah. Jose Martinez. Yeah. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right. All right. So once you have SD, surface declaration, the ditch number, put an asterisk for suffix. It's just like a placeholder. It's kind of how you just fill it out. The asterisk, and there's also an instruction that says, hey, if you just put the asterisk if you don't have the suffix. So once you click that, it'll generate. So I'm a very well-prepared guy, and so I actually have it pulled up. So it'll generate this. I'm glad I didn't close it out. So this is exactly what it'll generate, and then this is for that ditch that I just put in. And so basically you can go through and identify which parcel you're looking at, the name, click on the link to that corresponding landowner, and you can look up the rights, the water rights for that property. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Yes, see hands.
The owner.
Ladies first, I'm sorry, ladies first.
Quick question. I own property with water rights. Would it be good for me to just check to make sure that it's correct on the
Yes, that's a great question. So the miss asked if it's a good idea, like you are a landowner and you have, to your knowledge, you have water rights.
Well, I signed all the paperwork when I bought the land.
Yeah.
I paid for the second.
Oh, I'm sure you jumped through every hurdle you had to. And regardless, I would look it up.
Yeah.
I've actually recently come across, I think, 2 landowners that are like, I swear I have water rights. I got 30 acres. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. And I would look it up. I was like, I am so sorry to inform you, but it could be an issue on their end. You know, it's technology. People have to update it, right? And you're dealing with 2 or 3 people to get to one objective, and that's to have the green light that you can use this water. And so people, you know, sometimes it's the Office of State Engineers, sometimes it's technology. I've come across landowners who are like, they swear up and down that they have water rights, but it just might not be the system. So yeah, great question.
So the record will be at the state engineer's office will reflect the last owner that had the water rights assigned to them. When a property is sold, the title company does not transfer that water right for you. So if you buy a piece of property or you've inherited a piece of property, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that you take your documentation to the state engineer's office and have those water rights transferred in his office to your name. Otherwise, you look it up by my name, it won't show up. But it'll look it up by my father's name, it'll show up.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Do you have to go to Santa Fe to do that?
Yeah, very true. So the gentleman was saying, whoever is purchasing that land and trying to transfer it, it's their responsibility to make sure to follow up to do the paperwork. You're not going to have the state, Office of State Engineers call you and be like, hey, have you re-upped or transferred those water rights? It's not going to happen. Okay, so yeah, great.
Also, Taos Valley Acequia Association has that service for a very nominal fee to help you update. And they're located right in this building.
I didn't know that.
Taos Valley Acequia Association.
All right, so the gentleman's saying Taos Valley Acequia Association has resources to help facilitate
And with a very nominal fee, yeah.
Yeah, guide that process. That's great.
So TPAA can help you, nominal fee. That is only for properties from Llano Quemado up to Arroyo Hondo. If you're beyond that, if you're in San Cristobal or farther north, they are not certain as properties. Is that right?
That's only within the Taos Valley.
Beautiful. Yes. And it can be confusing, so yeah, get all the help you can get. Double check online, call. Most likely, you're good to go, but the chance that you're not, that could be a bad day. So just make a phone call. Or 2, or 3, not 10, maybe 20. Other questions? This is what I like. I like to answer questions, talk to people, and jam.
First thing, put farmers and ranchers on the first thing, so it's,
What's that?
put farmers and ranchers, because at the beginning it just says farmers looking for farmers. Later on in the presentation, it shows ranchers, and the same on the web page.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, the program is for farmers and ranchers.
Right, so
Yeah.
maybe on the beginning, it'd be cool if you did it, but, one of the things that, when you talk about conservation, like in Taos, some of the land that I lease right in the middle of town,
Mhm.
because I either bale hay or, graze cattle on it, it's $3 an acre.
Yep.
Same land right next door that you don't, $600 an acre, they're never gonna develop it. If it's kind of near commercial, it's up to $1,200, so something like that as a, I don't know, you're hooked to get people to stay in ag and
Yeah.
keep their land in open space would help. Then, I block a lot of land, sometimes it's only 3 acres next to a 6 acre, next to somebody that's got 20, and then I put them all together, and lease them all at once, irrigate them at once, and then rotate, because I'm using regenerative ag, and I move the livestock a lot. So that'd be, like, some places are real small, but, even somebody like me who runs cattle can utilize them under the right conditions. It's more about time and not numbers, so you're not there long, but you still get the tax break if you do it that way.
Yeah. Very
And
good.
then this one's kind of for me. I want you to link to other states like Colorado and Texas.
Mhm.
So, because the way I graze, I move the cattle all the time, and it'd be nice if I had winter pasture sometimes instead of eating hay, and then I just stockpile at certain locations.
Yeah, and
And
that's
then I got a bunch of other for after everybody's done.
So I got a chance to meet this gentleman just a moment ago before this started. I can already tell he has a wealth of knowledge. So so if you have a couple more points you want to throw out there, I'm sure we can all learn.
Well, for whatever reason, the state of New Mexico, for instance, they tax cows. We're one of only 3 states in the whole United States that taxes food before it becomes consumable food. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but, so they discourage it. Secondly, Town of Taos says we're green. We want it. But they don't have any incentive programs to keep your land in ag. And one of them should just, even pure open space for birds and bees and all those other guys would be good. And, I don't have to be there every year, maybe every other year. So those are the kind of things that I'm hoping you guys from the university can help us lobby for at the state level, because it's a key component. Some of the larger, this is another thing, and this is more for you guys at the university, some of the larger organizations or landowners, I've worked with Bacon, I've worked with Sandia Casino, the Pueblos, they bought a lot of land up in Angel Fire, Eagle Nest. What they'll do is, they got 18,000 acres. You'll get to use 3, but they get the whole thing exempt. See, so they play with the game just so they can, and the whole game is to get elk hunters, they get a lot of rich people to fly in, they had to steal John Deere. But really, they're not using it for ag.
Yeah.
And so, those are the kind of things the state should be
Monitoring
encouraging.
and
And
enforcing.
it's a fantastic idea to grow a portion of our food within our community, right? Within some proximity. And green doesn't mean it has to come on a Walmart truck across town. Green means it's local. So those are the kind of things that I'm hoping the cooperative agencies, New Mexico State can help with. This is Joyce over there, who's been allowed with the state to, so that would encourage farming around. And then I already said about open space. And then the last thing is, somehow we have to link, for instance, 70% of our county is controlled by federal land. It's even greater than that. We have to link land users down here with federal land, because that's where our water comes from. And 90% of us, probably all of us, have some kind of wood in our house. And we don't have to burn it all.
Mhm.
Maybe we could get some of it here and make fire breaks by using loggers to bring some of that out commercially instead of just. So those are the kind of things I'm hoping that we can link.
Yeah.
Because all this is tied together, because
It
that's
is
where
tied
our
together.
water comes from. And
Yeah, it is time together. And these are the issues and challenges that I lose sleep over. And I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And there does need to be more financial incentive for keeping agricultural land in agriculture beyond sentiment and beyond values. Because that's really the only, that's the main reason why agricultural land stays in agriculture is because the previous agricultural landowner just wants to ensure that that land is kept in ag. Not because they can, not because it's a trade-off that, well, they can sell it for $10 million and develop it, right? They know it's not a financial gain to keep it in agriculture, but it's values and it's principle. But we need to go far beyond that to actually create financial incentives and also ensure that these properties don't go to children that, well, it's hard to create a policy for that, but to create systems that address the event that a 90-year-old landowner doesn't have a proper succession plan. It goes to 4 kids. All 4 kids live across the country, and they all want to do, one wants to keep it in that, one wants to sell it to a strip mall developer, and having ways to meet the expectations of those individuals and find things that work for everybody, but also really trying to push for not sacrificing that property to something that you can never reverse it from. We can go on for a topic of all those things. So yeah, thank you.
Well, just as far as water is concerned and people's irrigable land, it's municipalities, including Taos, are not going to be looking for incentives to keep you in farming. They're going to be trying to buy your water rights because of progress, because of population expansion. And that's a big concern as well, is people with water rights are actually targets.
Yeah, I would push back on that a little bit. I think our town and county governments the Acequias hold a lot of sway. We actually have our wonderful County Commissioner Darlene D. Hill here this evening. And for the water, in current water Acequia law, any kind of intra-basin transfer has to be voted on by commissioners, and there's a whole lot that goes into that. So while there is that development pressure, the possibility of a water right leaving in Acequia is lower than it's ever been, I would say, is how I would say that.
Okay.
The main purchaser of the water rights in Taos County at this point is actually going to be Taos Pueblo, not either the town or the county.
Or the ski valley that you're looking at.
Why would they purchase anything when they have just received it all and are blessing us with their grace for what we get to use?
It's under the Abeta and Arellano.
That's what I'm saying.
settlement.
Yeah.
They have first right of refusal on water rights for in Taos Valley.
Okay.
Another kind of consideration, something Jillian and Wes and myself have talked about before is, if it is an irrigated property, making sure you're checking to see if those water rights are in good standing. The dues are paid. Who's going to be paying those dues, which are often substantial, a large amount compared to the amount of work. And as we all know, in irrigating, we often don't really calculate that time that it takes us to irrigate. So who's really going to be out there irrigating and opening the gates and checking it all night, yada, yada, yada. That really needs to be kind of spelled out. Additionally, if you're getting on a piece of property that has not been worked in a while, at the repartos, there's already kind of a set kind of schedule. Don't just show up one day and surprise the mayordomo and say, "Hey, I'm going to irrigate this big property all of a sudden." Give them some heads up. Give them some kind of hey, that property that hasn't been worked in a while is gonna have, that way they're not trying to juggle the schedule too much. That's another kind of consideration. So really talking with that mayordomo, talking with those commissioners as soon as you can. If it's something complicated, if it's a property that's been irrigating, no complexity or whatever, no big deal. You show up, you ask for the water. So just another kind of consideration to be thinking about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is a great example. Like, I've dealt with individuals and water rights for a while, but really it's going to be Will and your SAQ associations and folks like Jillian that can speak to the technical details of this particular region.
And Judy is back in the office on May 5th.
So, yeah. Another consideration with water is a lot of people around here, your acequia is not necessarily going to get you through the full season if you're a specialty crop producer, if you're doing vegetables. So a lot of people have to supplement with well water. It's really important to know that technically under state law, you cannot sell produce off of a residential well. That law is not currently enforced, but at some point it's going to be more financially rational for the state to enforce that law than to keep throwing money at Texas. So if you're looking at purchasing land or you're looking at a long-term lease, make sure that you're looking at a property with either an agricultural well or a homestead well, because you cannot sell off of a residential well at this time.
So, in describing the property, I understand, so it's not the secret that I have that. But so you really wouldn't put that as an
It depends on.
I sometimes would use that kind of fire.
I can yell out. Commissioner Hill, do you know what year the wells changed from homestead to residential?
I don't.
I believe it's somewhere around 1956, 1957, but if you're working with a real estate agent or if you go to the county assessor's office, I'm guessing you can find out what sort of well is on a property. Again, if it's a homestead well, then you're fine and you can sell off of that. But if it is listed as a residential well, technically you're breaking the law. You're fine for probably at least 5 more years, but it will be coming down.
It's important to know the assessor's office does not track wells.
The state
Oh,
engineer.
really?
State engineers.
Okay, so you have to go to OSE to determine the type of well.
Right, that is correct.
It's actually the same way that they looked up the acequia.
Thanks, Rosa.
So under the same category? No, we look up RG and then your well number. Okay. Instead of SD, it's RG. Yeah, and then we have
The county assessors will help you with determining your property zone. So it's a lot of people all working towards one thing, right?
Is it pretty difficult to put a well on just land as opposed to a residential well? Is there a lot of restrictions like you need?
That's really a question for the OSC's office, how easy it is at this point to get an agricultural well or transfer a residential well or commercial well to agricultural. That would be a question for them.
What is OSC?
Office of the State Engineer. Additionally, you really want to look into that in a lot of detail on, and it is now becoming a thing of transferring surface water rights to a well, and that's another thing that the commission, the individual second commission has a lot of voting power on. So that's not something that can just happen overnight.
And I think in general, we would not generally encourage that. We would really discourage anyone from transitioning surface water rights to subsurface rights. Also, Will and I are going to work on slowly over time developing a list of real estate agents who specialize in agricultural land and lawyers who specialize in agricultural land for those who want that sort of support that Wes would definitely get in major trouble for if he tried to give you.
Actually, I am currently working.
So you had called a bunch of them, didn't you? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm currently working on compiling a list for all 33 counties of.
I've got a few for you.
I would take those. Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, so, and I'm sure your resources are a little bit more like kind of specific to here, but maybe some insider information that Google doesn't readily display for smaller providers. But yeah, so currently, and this will be on the LandLink website, but I am using one of my student employees and myself to compile a list for all 33 counties of real estate attorneys, estate planners, farm and ranch consultants. There's agricultural lawyers that specialize with topics pertaining to agriculture, office estate engineers. There's like 2 other categories. So you'll be able to go to the website, find your county, and then find a comprehensive list of every applicable professional service that might be used for your situation. It's not up yet. I'm only one guy, man.
I'd just be interested in how many people here are looking for land and how many people have land that they're looking for somebody to.
It's a great question. So please raise your hand if you are either a farmer or rancher. Raise it high. Hi. Awesome. And raise your hand if you are a landowner. Oh, wow. I wish we would have asked that at the start.
Does anybody want to sell some land?
With lots of water.
Yeah, someone like
Yeah, so Vince already has a profile on there.
He does. He does.
Is there a typical size or acreage for a lot to be viable?
Great question. No, to answer your question simply. So I've worked with people that have a 1/4 acre, and I've worked with 500 acres. So there's really like agriculture is agriculture. It doesn't have to be a gigantic operation for it to be of value for someone to utilize. So
I think that's the beauty of this program, is that because it's kind of out there, if it is a 1 acre lot, put it on there. That's going to work for somebody. It's not going to work for everybody. It's going to work for some folks. If it's a 300 acre lot, that's going to work for a different size of producer, different size of leases.
yeah, and that's a great point. This is what I tell folks. If they see the site, they're like, either they are looking for land or they are looking for a producer. They're like, yeah, it's a cool website. I'll just network my own way and find what I'm going to find. It's free. It takes 10 minutes, and it's just putting it out there. But the match that was just made in Santa Fe, one of those individuals was in that boat. They're like, are you going to hassle me to do this? I said, no, I'm not going to hassle you. I'm just saying that it's a free, accessible, easy-to-use opportunity, and you have no idea what's going to come out of it. He didn't know he was going to find an ex-physicist that's starting a new aquaponics system that's going to be a perfect producer for his farm-to-table bed and breakfast, right? He wasn't expecting that, but he called me and he was like, this is freaking awesome. I'm so glad I made a listing. And it takes 10 minutes, but you have no idea what's out there.
For an example, I have in 2 different places on 1 acre behind their house. We're developing it. I have 4 bulls in each one, and they have fence on 3 sides, and I just have 1 single hot wire on the other. And I'll take them there for 30 days and then take them home. But I do that all over town. And they're big bulls, and everybody thinks, oh my God, they're like puppies.
They don't fight among each other.
They're together all the time, so they're already over that.
As we like to say, when bulls aren't having their showtime season over the winter, they kind of drink whiskey and play cards.
I think it's also really important to note that this website, Wes has put a stunning amount of effort into this. I have watched him from afar as he's been doing it. But at the end of the day, it's as good as we make it. If you get on there right now and you're like,
there's not a lot of people.
There's nothing on there. It is only as good if we have faith in it and we all go put ourselves on there. It's actually going to work. If we all go on there and we're like, nah, this isn't what we were looking for. There's not enough things on here. It's never going to work. So please, if this is something you care about, go get that profile on there. tell your friends about it, and let's make this the resource that it can be.
Nice. Very good.
That was well put, that was perfect. And Julian is so right, like when we're talking about land access and keeping land in agriculture, using free available resources like that is a means to help alleviate and address that, so thank you, that was perfect, yeah. She had her hand up and I'll get right over to you, yes.
What's the difference between a homestead well and a residential well?
Difference between a homestead well and a residential well could be perfectly answered by the office of city engineer.
Pretty much the year it was issued and when a policy change happened in our state. So prior to a certain date, all wells were homestead wells, and then we hit a certain date and we no longer issued homestead wells and started issuing either commercial or residential.
This one has 3 acre feet, the other one has 1.
What was the date?
I can never remember. I've got like 1956 in my head, but I have no idea if that's right. It could be 50 years earlier than that, is how much I trust my memory on that. So, to be looked up.
That's a great question. And I will never BS you. I will never just kind of like give you an answer that kind of satisfies. So if I don't know, I will find the answer for you, or I will get you in touch with the person to answer that question. So great question, and thank you, Julian. Yes?
Do you have any like flyers that I could post I'm down in Ojo?
Yeah.
And I could put something up unless you already have things you're circulating, but
Yes.
I'd like to post it.
You're awesome. First and foremost, I do have my business cards here. I know it's not what you're asking for, but this has my personal cell phone number on it. Please reach out, let me know. You can also get in touch with me on the website. I've got about 700 brochures in my car.
Okay, cool.
So,
Great.
yeah. I will get those.
So what questions can we all call you with as we're navigating this process, and what can we go to Will with as we're navigating this process?
Great question. So the things that I am sort of specialized in, number one, an easy one, if ever you have questions about the website, I'm the person, don't bug Will with that. He's busy enough. But things pertaining to land lease agreements, so not just like the components, but also like the different agreements that I touched on. And that wasn't all the agreements. I don't know if that's even on one slide. But that's going to make up most of the different types of agreements. And that's one of the things I like most, is to figure out with a land seeker and a landowner. I love kind of being a middle person with that, because I like people, and it's often a very complex puzzle to anticipate the expectations of two people. But I enjoy trying to find the agreement that both parties are excited about. And so there's not a black and white thing. So helping navigate those agreements, the different options that you have, and also how to manage landlord and tenant relationships, what that communication looks like, some checks and balances to have. Also, not just with land access, I've got lots of experience just in agriculture. I've developed farms before. I've created new farmer incubator programs. So with like crop production and things like that, irrigation, definitely have my fair share of it. When it comes to specific questions in the county, and things like that for like weeds or, I don't know, there's so many, I could go, wells, like there's a lot of different topics. Then Will is going to be your expert. So, is that?
Yeah, should we also go to Will if you want to put a profile on the website and we just want to get our face in front of him and talk a little bit more through our needs? Can Will help us with that?
Yes, what was that again?
What am I helping with?
I'm saying yes to that.
I'm asking what folks in here can come to you about as they're navigating this process. If it's worth them coming and saying hi to you when they make a profile so that you know who's out there and what their needs are.
How many people in here have had me come to their property? Hey, was it worth it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yes, come talk to us. We'll come out and do a site visit, kind of talk about what that might look like. So,
Yeah, Will is just
a wealth of information.
Yeah, no, he really is, and I've, this is only, I think, our second or third time, like face to face, but I've heard from so many people, man, Will, this dude does a great job.
Does Will have cars?
Yeah. Will? Yes, he does have cars that he will.
I am down to my last 2 cards. I got rid of 800 cards in 7 months, believe it or not. So I have a card. I'm gonna get this card, and you can take a picture of it on your way out.
You can also just waltz into his office.
Yeah, just show up, dude.
Which is where?
Right here.
Right here.
So right here in the back, there's a suite of office suites. It's a great place to come during a weekday. We share this office suite with Taos Valley Acequia Association. And then, of course, down the street are our partners with Taos Soil and Water, and down the street that way is TCDC. So right in this little mecca town, you can get a lot of shopping done.
Awesome, thank you. Don't forget your evaluation, just saying.
I think that might conclude this evening. I just want to say thank you all so much for your time.